فَإِنَّهَا جَوَارُكُم مِّن فِتْنَتِهِ. That these verses of Surah Al-Kahf are protection from his tribulation. إِنَّهُ خَارِجٌ خُلَّةٍ بَيْنَ الشَّامِ وَالْإِرَاقِ. He shall come between a khulla, which is a gap or a valley. The word is al-khalla, meaning at-tariq, which is a road between Syria and Iraq. In this region he shall appear. And then فَعَاثَ يَمِينًا وَعَاثَ شِمَالًا. He shall go right and left, meaning he shall go to every town of the world. He shall have the means to travel. Imagine that in a time, a post-apocalyptic world, post-Armageddon world. Ya ibadallahi fathbutu. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam addresses the Muslims, O slaves of Allah, stay firm. Qulna ya Rasulallahi, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wa ma labthu fil ard. How long shall he remain on the earth? Now, Shaykh Imran Hussein interprets the British Empire as the first day, the US as the second day, and then the Israelis to be the third day. But the correct interpretation is what is mentioned in the hadith. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Arba'una yawman," 40 days. Yawmun ka sanatin, one day like a year. Wa yawmun ka shahrin, one day like a month. Wa yawmun ka jum'atin, and one day like a Friday, meaning a normal day. Wa sa'iru ayamihi ka ayamikum, and the rest of the days will go like the rest of your normal days. Qulna, we said, Ya Rasulallahi, O Messenger of Allah, فَذَلِكَ الْيَوْمُ الَّذِي كَسَنَةٍ أَتَكْفِينَ فِيهِ صَلَاةُ يَوْمٍ. That day which is like a year, is one salah, one prayer sufficient for us? Meaning, do we only pray 5 prayers? قَالَ لَا أُقْدُرُ لَهُ قَدْرَهُ. No, proportion them. Meaning, that day which is like a year, divided into 365 portions, and then for each portion pray 5 prayers, because the day will actually feel like a year. As Shaykh Imran Hussein may say, you are being very irrational. How can a day be like a year? My response to that would be, firstly, khawariqul aada, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can stop the rotation of the earth by His divine power. This is a possibility, it's not a rational impossibility, firstly. Secondly, the hadith states that the end of times will come when the sun will rise from the west and set in the east. It will happen once. This changing of the rotation or slowing down of the rotation of the earth is a sign of that happening. Meaning, scientifically, scientists will be able to explain why the rotation is slowing down, and even when the sun rises from the west, it will happen once. Scientists will also have a scientific explanation for this also. At the moment they disbelieve in this, but when it will occur, it will be too late for everyone to believe when the sun will rise from the west. So because the end of times is drawing close, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will slow down the rotation of the earth for one day. That one day will feel like a year, meaning it will be as long as a year. And this one day will be the main time when Ad-Dajjal will go from city to city. قُلْنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَمَا إِسْرَاعُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. How quickly shall he go through the earth? إِسْرَاع. قَالَ كَالْغَيْثِ إِسْتَدْبَرَتْهُ الرِّيحُ. Like the clouds which are pushed or are followed by the wind. When you see clouds and a heavy wind behind them, that's how quick he will go. He will go from city to city. But if a person recites Surah Al-Kahf, he is protected. But the state of the world's cities will not be like the way they are today, built up cities. The world population decreased heavily. People will be after food, basics. Meaning it will be an apocalyptic world, post-Armageddon world. فَيَأْتِي عَلَى الْقَوْمِ, he shall go to a people. فَيَدْعُوهُمْ, he will call them. فَيُؤْمِنُونَ بِهِ, they will believe in him as being God. فَيَأْمُرُ السَّمَاءَ فَتُمْطِرْ, he will order the skies and the skies will give rain. وَالْأَرْضَ فَتَنْبُتُ, he will order the earth and the earth will grow. Meaning this is magic, even though only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this power, but he will fool people. فَتَرُوحُ عَلَيْهِمْ صَارِحَةٌ أَطْوَلَ مَا كَانَتْ ذُرًا, the camels shall come back to them with a bigger hump. وَأَسْبَغَهُ ضُرُوعًا, that they will be filled with milk. وَأَمَدَّهُ خَوَاصِرًا, and their sides shall be fat, meaning the animals, because he shall come during droughts. Not the droughts that we have today, an international drought. ثُمَّ يَأْتِي الْقَوْمَ فَيَدْعُوهُمْ. Remember one thing, one of the signs of the Gog Magog appearing also is that Lake Tiberias shall be dry. This Lake Tiberias, that Lake Tiberias shall be dry. When will the drying start? Sheikh Imran Hussain believes the Israelis living there now will Gog and Magog, and they are drinking the water and the water is drying away. But I can guarantee him that Israel will not deplete the water. The water will be depleted during the droughts that will occur during the time of Ad-Dajjal. The water levels will start going down extremely. And by the time they appear, the entire water level would have gone down. ثُمَّ يَأْتِيَ الْقَوْمَ, then he shall come to another people. فَيَدْعُوهُمْ, he shall call them. فَيَرُدُّونَ عَلَيْهِ قَوْلَهُ, they shall reject him. فَيَنْصَرِفُ عَنْهُمْ, he shall go away from them. فَيَقُولُونَ فَيُصْبِحُونَ مُمَحِّلِينَ لَيْسَ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ شَيْءٌ مِّنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, they shall become what? The word is مُمَحِّلِينَ, meaning they shall have nothing, or in droughts. لَيْسَ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ شَيْءٌ مِّنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, they shall have no wealth. وَيَمُرُّ بِالْخَرِبَةِ فَيَقُولُ لَهَا, he shall pass by desolate lands. خَرِبَة, lands that are desolate. فَيَقُولُ لَهَا, he shall say to the land, أَخْرِجِي كُنُوزَكِ فَتَتْبَعُهُ, bring out your treasures. The treasures shall follow him. كُنُوزُهَا كَيَعَاسِيبِ النَّحْلِ, the way bees follow the leader. Meaning these miracles he shall show, which will be trickery. ثُمَّ يَدْعُو رَجُلًا مُمْتَلِئًا شَبَابًا, then you shall, a young man, shaban, مُمْتَلِئًا, strong build, he shall strike him. فَيَضْرِبُهُ بِسَيْفٍ, this young man, according to the narrators of Al-Imam Muslim, is Sayyiduna Khidr alayhi salam, that Dajjal will attempt to kill him. فَيَضْرِبُهُ بِسَيْفٍ وَيَقْطَعُهُ, he shall cut him جَزَالَتَيْنِ وَجِزَالَتَيْنِ, into two parts. رَمْيَةَ الْغَرْضِ, meaning the two parts shall be separate from one another. ثُمَّ يَدْعُوهُ, then he will call him. فَيُقْبِلْ وَيَتَهَلَّلُ وَجْهُهُ وَيَضْحَكُ, this young man shall be put back together and his face shall be bright and he shall laugh, meaning he shall laugh at Dajjal. Because if it is Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam, then he's a prophet and the Dajjal is nothing to him. فَبَيْنَمَا هُوَ كَذَلِكَ, now when this happens, this last sign, that when Ad-Dajjal will cut the young man in two, this is when Ad-Dajjal will lose his power. فَيَبْعَثُ اللَّهُ إِذَا بَعَثَ اللَّهُ الْمَسِيحَ ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall send Isa bin Maryam alayhi salam. فَيَنْزِلُ عِنْدَ الْمَنَارَةِ الْبَيْضَاءِ شَرْقَيْ دَمِشْقِ بَيْنَ مُرَحْوَذَتَيْنِ, that he shall descend on the eastern side of Damascus near a white minaret. So eastern side of Damascus, which is, according to some scholars, they say the eastern side of Damascus is Jerusalem. That Isa alayhi salam shall descend in Jerusalem. Another group of scholars say it is actually Damascus. he shall descend in. And then from Damascus he shall march to Jerusalem. This is how they join between the two hadith. There are two minarets in Damascus which fit this description. One is in Jami' al-Umawi, the Grand Umayyad Masjid. One white minaret is in Grand Umayyad Masjid, and one is in Bab Tuma, which is a Christian area in Damascus which has a white minaret. So Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam shall descend there. وَاضِعًا كَفَّيْهِ عَلَى أَجْنِحَةِ مَلَكَيْنِ, placing his hands upon the wings of two angels. إِذَا طَأْطَأَ رَأْسُهُ قَطَرًا, when he moves his head, raises it, the head will drip. Remember, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam is coming from a different realm, from the second heaven, not paradise, the second heaven. And therefore the water signifies something. وَإِذَا رَفَعَهُ تَحَدَّرَ, and when he raises his head, تَحَدَّرَ minhu, rolls down from this, مِثْلُ جُمَانٍ كَاللُّؤْلُوِ, drops like pearls will come down when he raises his head. Remember, he's known as Ruhullah, the Spirit of Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created his spirit, not like a Shaykh Imran Hussain would believe that the Spirit of Allah is divine. Waliyadu billah, this would be kufr to say that Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam has something divine inside of him. So, فَلَا يَحِلُّ لِكَافِرٍ يَجِدُ مِنْ رِيحِ نَفَسِهِ إِلَّا مَاتَ. Any disbeliever at that time, meaning from the army of Ad-Dajjal, that smells him will die. The smell of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, min rihi nafasihi, meaning the fragrance of his breath. The fragrance of the breath of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, if it reaches a disbeliever, the disbeliever will die. وَنَفَسُهُ يَنْتَهِي حَيْثُ يَنْتَهِي طَرْفُهُ, the fragrance of his breath will reach where his eyesight reaches. Why? Because he has descended during war. There is a war now. So during the time of war, he has descended. So what will happen? فَيَطْلُبُهُ حَتَّى يُدْرِكَهُ بِبَابِ لُدٍّ فَيَقْتُلُهُ. Sayyiduna Isa alayhi salam will chase after Ad-Dajjal until he reaches the door of Lud. When he reaches the door of Lud, that is where Ad-Dajjal will be killed. ثُمَّ يَأْتِي عِيسَى عليه السلام إِلَى قَوْمٍ قَدْ عَصَمَهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. Then Sayyiduna Isa alayhi salam will go to a people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected from Ad-Dajjal. Remember, the number of fighters with Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam at this time is 12,000. In another report, the number of fighters that are mentioned are 12,000. فَيَمْسَحُ عَنْ وُجُوهِهِمْ, he will wipe their faces. وَيُحَدِّثُهُمْ بِدَرَجَاتِهِمْ فِي الْجَنَّةِ, and he shall inform them of their status in paradise. فَبَيْنَمَا هُوَ كَذَلِكَ, while he is in that state, إِذْ أَوْحَى اللَّهُ إِلَىٰ عِيسَى, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall inspire Isa alayhi salam, إِنِّي قَدْ أَخْرَجْتُ عِبَادًا لِي, I have brought out slaves of mine, لا يداني لأحد بقتالهم, no one has might to destroy them, to fight them. Who are these? يأجوج and مأجوج. فحرز عبادي إلى الطور, protect my servants in the mountain of At-Tur. ويبعث الله يأجوج ومأجوج, then the two nations يأجوج and مأجوج shall come down. وهم من كل حدب ينسلون, and they shall descend down from every slope. So now we move on to discussing Ya'juj and Ma'juj in more detail. But because of the lack of time, and unlike the previous times where I've lectured up to 6 hours, we will stop here. And inshallah in the future, when we have time, we will go into the discussion of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, what I had, the information I had, which would also interest Shaykh Imran Hussain also, and refuting his theory that they have already been released, or discussing the theory and analyzing that theory. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to do the lecture in the future.